This chart tracks young adults living with parents. In the 1970s, it hovered around 1 in 10. Today, it has shot up to 1 in 3. Expanding this timeline back to the 1930s, the current rate matches the peak recorded during the Great Depression. The cultural stereotype often paints these returning adults as unmotivated, but the census data shows the opposite. The vast majority of these 25 to 34-year-olds living in their childhood bedrooms are fully employed. This graph tracks the divergence between income and the cost of living over the last decade. While wage growth has stayed relatively flat, the combined costs of rent and inflation have spiked, putting independent living mathematically out of reach for millions. Under this heavy economic pressure, the parental home acts as an essential safety valve. For young men without college degrees in particular, moving back in with family is the primary barrier keeping them out of poverty. From the perspective of the returning young adult, a rent-free room is a logical choice. It appears to be an efficient way to pay down student debt or stockpile cash. On paper, this provides immediate shelter. But zooming out reveals a system that quietly erodes the financial stability of both generations simultaneously. When an adult child moves back in, the daily microeconomy of the household shifts. Parents suddenly absorb compounding costs. Utilities run higher, grocery bills expand, and insurance premiums jump. Survey data shows nearly 40%. Without open conversations about the household ledger, the family is effectively running a deficit. They are funding the child's current expenses by drawing down the parent's eventual retirement security. The Urban Institute analyzed this exact demographic, specifically focusing on young adults who remain in their parents' homes between the ages of 25 and 34. This timeline tracks the outcomes of two groups. It reveals that despite living rent-free to save money, these adults are statistically less likely to become homeowners a decade later compared to peers who rented independently. The economic math here is unforgiving. Homeownership remains the primary wealth-building tool in the United States. Delaying that purchase permanently stunts a person's life cycle net worth. The strategy young adults deploy to secure a financial advantage ends up being the mechanism that prevents them from building long-term wealth. We need a different approach. Society must view moving back home as a permanent, complex economic reality that requires a coordinated strategy. The first rule of the household is protective boundaries. Parents must prioritize their own 401k and retirement contributions above other expenses. The logic is simple. A young adult has decades ahead to borrow money for a house or an education. A parent cannot take out a loan to fund their retirement. Financial planners advise establishing a written contract that outlines shared expenses and sets a strict, agreed-upon timeline for when the adult child will leave. As part of that agreement, parents should charge the adult child a mandatory monthly rent. This enforces budgeting habits and prevents the lifestyle inflation that comes from having zero housing costs. Some parents choose to stockpile these rent payments in a separate account, eventually returning the funds as a lump sum down payment when the child departs. Moving back home requires a specific intergenerational pact. Strict boundaries and a shared timeline turn co-residence into a functional strategy for a successful launch.